Okay, we're going to continue on reading. We have one more vocabulary word, and that word is creatures, which we'll see on this page. So let's continue.
And there was the time Johnny saw that sparks from his fire were killing mosquitoes. So Johnny put out the fire. Even the smallest of creatures should not be harmed, he said.
So we see the word creatures here, and I think we've all heard this word before probably. Creatures are just like animals. Any animal is considered a creature. Usually not humans, but sometimes I suppose you could say humans are bizarre creatures. All right, let's keep going. Just showing that he cared about animals very much and all creatures.
These stories may not all be true, but they show what people thought of Johnny Appleseed. They heard that he was kind to animals. So in their stories, they made him super kind. So kind that a wild wolf would stay at his side. Maybe the story was too good to be true, but that was how people wanted to remember Johnny.
Okay, so here you see the author's talking about how, yeah, he was kind to animals. He did love animals, but also people kind of what we call embellished the stories about him. Embellished meaning they kind of made them more powerful than they actually were. So yeah, maybe he saved a wolf, but I don't think that in actuality the wolf stayed by his side. And I don't think he would put out a whole fire that he just made because one little mosquito got a spark on him. So they're kind of embellishing these stories. They're making him seem superhuman or super kind. Whereas in real life, yeah, he was probably a kind guy, but not to this extent. But still, it's fun because the author explains how people liked to view him that way.
They also knew that he was strong and full of energy, so they told stories that made him sound like a Superman. In one story, he could chop wood twice as fast as any man. In another, he could walk for miles barefoot on frozen rivers. And he once jumped so high that it took him a whole day to come back down to earth.
Again, these stories are very exaggerated. That could never happen in real life. He could never jump so high that it would take a whole day to come back down to earth. But they wanted to make Johnny Appleseed almost seem superhuman. So they made up these stories about him. He was a real guy, but a lot of these stories aren't actually real. Here's some kids reading the story of Johnny Appleseed. And here's our last page. Keep in mind before we start reading this, we're reading this page and we need to know how does the text contribute to the author's purpose, which is to inform the reader about Johnny Appleseed's life.
All kinds of people told stories about Johnny Appleseed that made him sound like a hero, and a lot of people believed them. Now, put all these stories together, and what do you get? Well, you get a legend. You get a man who is stronger, kinder, and smarter than any man who ever walked the earth. That was how people saw Johnny Appleseed, and that's how they wanted to remember him.
Okay, so when we talk about this page, mainly we're saying that this page contributed to the author's purpose because what it did was it tells about the life of Johnny Appleseed. It tells about how people thought of Johnny Appleseed or saw Johnny Appleseed. So that's how this last page, page 31, contributes to the author's purpose because it tells about Johnny Appleseed's life and how people viewed Johnny Appleseed and how they saw him. Okay, so that's all for now. Our third video will focus only on our vocabulary before you guys get to your Google form.